The silence has lasted too long. Letters grow rarer, whispers in the village sharpen into daggers, and Kevin's vow begins to tremble under the weight of absence. But just when hope seems ready to shatter, a single message arrives, one that could either save everything or destroy the last piece of him still standing. What will Kevin choose when love demands not just waiting, but sacrifice? A vow carved in silence. The morning after the letter, the house had edges again. Kevin woke before the birds, before the first thread of light stitched through the shutters, and lay very still with the dog tag cooling against his sternum. The words from yesterday pressed into him like a seal alive, but missing and the seal would not lift. It wasn't comfort, it wasn't ruin, it was a blade laid flat across his life, and he learned how to breathe without cutting himself on it. He said the vow out loud for the first time, not a plea this time, not a bargain, a statement, small and iron. I'll wait. Silence received it, the kind that didn't echo, only held. He rose and dressed and began to stitch the day together with ordinary thread. The kettle first rinsed twice, because Dito always said, old water makes old tea. Rice set to soak, the grains ticking the bowl like soft rain. He swept the floor in long, patient strokes that pulled up a thin breadcrumb trail of dust, and with each pull he repeated it under his breath, as if it were a rhythm for the broom. I'll wait. I'll wait. The words didn't grow stronger with repetition. They grew steadier, a beam laid across a frame. Outside, the mango tree lifted its dark leaves into a newborn sky. He watered it slow, letting the hose wander in a silver arc. Dawn found its reflection there and shattered softly over his hands. The ground took the offering without comment. Kevin pressed his thumb into the wet soil and thought, this is how vows live, in small, done things. He tethered every task to the promise. The hinge on the gate had been complaining for weeks. He oiled it until the complaint was only memory. He replaced the frayed twine on the porch lantern. He turned the mattress and remade the bed with the particular corners Ditto liked. A shirt on the chair, folded sharp. The tin of letters brought out and counted not read. Not today then slipped back beneath the bed like a heartbeat under a rib. When he walked to the market, the path remembered him. Leaves printed damp coins on his sandals. The river, low and stubborn, pushed along the stones with its quiet argument. Villagers glanced up, measures of pity and habit in their eyes, and Kevin met them with a nod that was neither invitation nor refusal. He bought cinnamon, cardamom, a coil of soap that smelled of limes. The fruit seller tucked 2 small mangoes into his basket for free. Saying nothing, he gave her the favor of not thanking her twice. On the way home, he passed the bend where you could first see the roof of his house. The sight of it settled him the way a palm does a spooked horse. The roofline was the same thin line against the sky. The mango tree, a steady green hand. He felt it then, the shape of the vow inside him, not a flame, not a banner, but a stone. Weighty, portable, warm if he held it long enough. He spoke to Dito as he worked, but the sentences had changed. No more petitions, sent up like kites into an unwilling wind. Just a day's inventory, delivered to the space where another pair of hands should have been. I fixed the gate, he told the kitchen as he dried the cups. It doesn't squeal now. I found your old scarf in the chest, he told the porch, folding it and tucking it beneath the bench. It still smells like smoke and rain. The mangoes are early this year, he told the tree itself, watering its roots until the earth darkened. You'll complain they're too sweet. At noon he sat on the floor with his back to the bed and wrote, not to the camps this time, not to a courier who might or might not cross the hills, but to the absence itself, the place where Dito's shadow would stand when it finally came home. If you are lost, I will be the fixed point. If you are wandering, I will be the road's last turn. If you cannot hear me, I will keep speaking in the language of small work, and you will know the sound of it when you return. He folded the page once and slid it beneath the tin box. A new ritual nested under the old. The afternoon softened the house. Heat lifted from the boards. Cicadas struck their single high note and held it like a string. Kevin stood in the doorway and watched dust motes rise and fall in the slanted light. It occurred to him that time is not what breaks people, it's the unmarked hours, so he marked them. At 3, he set T2, steep. At 4, he swept the step. At 5, he wiped the table, and then, with the damp cloth still in his hand, rested his palm flat against the wood and counted to 20, feeling grain, feeling weight, feeling the day hold dot, and when the blue hour came, the one that had betrayed him before, he did not sit on the steps searching the road for figures the dusk could make out of anything. He stayed inside and lit the lamp early. He took down the map they never needed and ran his finger along roads Detto might have taken. Ridges, rivers, nameless cuts in the land. He didn't trace them to their ends. He traced them back toward home. Here, he murmured. Here, here, here. The vow did not make the night easier. It wasn't a charm. The bed's other half cooled as it always did. The dog tag lay where it always lay, a small moon against his chest. But when the first ache rolled through him like a slow wave, he did not brace against it. He let it pass. When the second came, he breathed with it. And when a third rose, Mina, he turned on his side and placed his hand on the empty space and said, very quietly, so as not to wake the old fear in the rafters, "I'll wait." The rafters said nothing. The house held. The vow settled into the beams and the boards, and the slight, familiar sway of the roof in wind, and the night moved forward by its careful inches, which is to say, the night moved as nights do, and he moved with it, before sleep found him. He pictured Daito not as a shadow or a flame, but as a man crossing a field at dawn, boots wet with dew, a line of breath in the cold. He pictured the way Daito's shoulders looked when he saw home before he permitted himself to smile. He set that image like a lamp in a window and turned down the wick until it was a pin of light. "Find this," he said into the dark. "I'll keep it lit." Letters in the wind. The letters multiplied like stones across a river, each one a step Kevin laid down in the hope that Daito would someday follow them home. At first, he wrote with restraint small notes, folded neatly, his words brief enough that a weary courier might tuck them into a pocket without complaint. "I am well. The mango tree has begun to flower. I miss you more in the evenings than I can bear." But restraint didn't last. Soon the pages thickened with ink. He wrote long into the night, hunched over the desk with the lamp burning low, filling page after page, as though the sheer weight of his words could bridge the distance. Sometimes his script was careful, each letter precise, almost formal. Other times his pen slipped into frantic scrawl, the lines slanting, the words tumbling as though he'd been running through them rather than writing them. "I dream of you every night. Your shirt still smells faintly of you, though the scent is fading. The silence between your letters gnaws at my need to know you are still breathing. I cannot let myself think of fire or gunshots or loss, because if I do, I unravel." He sealed each one with shaking hands, pressing the envelope to his lips before tucking it into the satchel by the door. In the morning, he waited for the traders, pressing the letters into their hands with coins and whispered, "Please, take this. Please, if there's a chance. If there's a road, just take it." Sometimes they nodded, sometimes they sighed. More often than not, weeks later, he would find the envelope returned, unopened, left in a basket, or slipped beneath his door with an apologetic murmur. "The roads aren't safe." So the letters began to pile up. Kevin tied them with twine in small bundles and stored them beneath the bed, the box growing heavier as the months stretched. Some bundles were neat, written in calmer days when he believed the silence would break soon. Others were messy, ink blotted with tears, words half-effaced by trembling hands. And yet he could not stop. Writing was breathing. Each letter was a lifeline cast into the dark, even if it never reached the shore. There were moments he read them back to himself, lips moving silently. His own words startled him, tender, desperate, angry, pleading. They revealed all the things he could never say aloud in the market, all the truths he whispered only to the walls. Sometimes, on stormy nights, he untied a bundle and pressed the letters to his chest, holding them like he might hold Daito himself. He imagined Daito's hands on the same paper, his eyes moving across the words. He imagined him smiling, frowning, whispering answers into the dark. But imagination was all he had, and so Kevin wrote more, refusing to let silence erase them both. "If these letters never reach you, let them at least carry my voice into the world. If the wind carries even a shred of what I write, then somewhere, somehow, you will feel me beside you." The pile beneath the bed grew taller, and with it, so did the ache of waiting. The market grows hostile. The market used to be a bomb for Kevin, a place where noise and movement pulled him out of his own head, where greetings and small exchanges stitched him into the fabric of daily life. But lately, the fabric was fraying. He felt it the moment he entered the square. Conversations stilled half a beat too long when he passed. Laughter dimmed. Hands paused over scales and baskets. Even the air felt thick with something unspoken. Kevin walked with a practiced calm, basket in hand, his chin lifted just enough to suggest composure. But his body betrayed him, his grip too tight on the handle, his shoulders tense, as though bracing for a blow. At the fruit stall, the vendor greeted him with a smile that was too soft, too knowing. "Still waiting, Kevin?" she asked, her tone meant to be kind but sharpened by pity. She pressed 2 extra mangoes into his basket without charge. He managed to thank you, but it caught in his throat. At the spice seller's booth, he heard it more directly. 2 women bent together, whispering just loud enough for him to catch. "He writes every day, they say. Piles of letters no one will read. Poor thing, he'll break when the truth comes." Kevin froze, fingers hovering over a jar of cardamom. Heat rose up his neck, not from shame but from the urge to defend himself, defend Ditto. He turned, but the women had already looked away, their conversation clipped shut like a snapped thread. The stares followed him through the square, some curious, others pitying, a few edged with impatience. He had become a figure in their story, the one who waits too long, who clings too fiercely. The narrative pressed on him like a stone he couldn't set down. When an older man at the grain stall muttered, he should let go better than being haunted, Kevin's restraint cracked. He set his coins down hard enough that they clattered. His voice shook, but it carried, "You don't know him. You don't know us. Don't speak as if you do." The man blinked, startled. The square fell briefly silent. Then, slowly, conversations resumed, lower now, sharper with interest. Kevin gathered his things with stiff hands and walked away, his heart pounding like a drum. On the road back home, the basket felt heavier than it should, not from the mangoes or the spices, but from the weight of eyes, of whispered doubts lodged under his skin. By the time he reached the house, Kevin's composure cracked fully. He set the basket down on the porch, dropped to his knees beside it, and pressed Dido's dog tag hard against his lips until the metal stung. "Let them talk," he whispered fiercely into the dusk. "They don't know. They'll never know." But even as he said it, the echo of the villagers' voices clung to him, thick as dust. The rumor of death. The rumor reached Kevin, not as a whisper this time, but as a blow. It began at the market again, with the sound of weeping. 2 women clutched each other by the well, their cries sharp enough to still the square. A soldier's wife had just been told her husband's unit had been ambushed inland, most of the men gone. The survivors scattered. Kevin froze mid-step, the blood rushing from his face. The words carried on the air like smoke from a burning field. Annihilated. No chance. Their names will be listed soon. And then Dito's unit number, spoken casually, almost carelessly, by a man stacking grain sacks nearby. The world tilted. Kevin's basket slipped from his hands, spilling cardamom pods and cinnamon sticks across the dirt. He didn't even notice. His ears rang so loudly he could barely hear the murmurs rising around him. Faces turned toward him, not cruel, not kind, just watching, measuring how he would break. He stumbled backward, forcing his legs to carry him out of the square. The murmurs followed him like shadows. His breaths came shallow, each one scraping against his ribs. By the time he reached the house, he collapsed just inside the door. The wooden boards cooled beneath his palms. He clawed at the dog tag under his shirt, pressing it so hard into his chest that the edges cut red crescents into his skin. His voice tore itself out of him, raw and uneven. "No, no, you're not gone. You promised me." He dragged himself to the bed, clutching the shirt Dito had left behind, burying his face in it as though he could pull him back through the fabric. The shirt smelled faintly of soap, of dust, of something fading faster every day. The villagers' words replayed over and over. Ambushed, no chance, gone. Each repetition felt like a hand closing tighter around his throat. He curled into himself, whispering Dito's name again and again, the syllables dissolving into sobs until his throat burned. When exhaustion finally overtook him, he lay there in the dark, the dog tag pressed between his palms, the silence pressing like a weight on his chest. It wasn't just grief that filled him, it was rage. Rage at the rumors, at the silence, at the war that had swallowed Dito whole. Rage that he couldn't stop any of it. But beneath the rage, deeper still, was the fragile ember of defiance. He is alive. He has to be, and I will not believe otherwise. Kevin clung to that ember like it was the last light left in the world. The night of fire. Sleep came late, dragging Kevin into its grip like a riptide. and when it did, it was merciless. That the dream began with silence, the kind that felt endless, pressing, suffocating. He stood on the porch of the house, the mango tree casting long shadows across the yard. The air was too still, no cicadas, no wind. The world was holding its breath. Then, in the distance, a faint orange glow rose over the hills. It spread fast, swallowing the horizon, the glow thickening into flame. Within moments, the entire sky was burning. Kevin stumbled forward, his throat raw, tighter through the wall of fire. He saw him, a silhouette at first, then sharper the cut of his shoulders, the familiar stride, the glint of dog tags catching the impossible light. For a heartbeat, Kevin believed the dream had twisted toward mercy. He believed he was being given what he had begged for. Dito walking toward him, but the flames thickened, curling around Dito's legs like chains. Smoke poured upward, choking the stars. Kevin tried to run, but the ground beneath him turned heavy, sticky, like mud dragging at his feet. His chest ached as he fought it, arms outstretched. "Stay with me," Kevin screamed, the sound ripping from him with more force than breath. Dito reached out, their hands almost touching. Kevin felt the heat, the phantom weight of his palm against his own. Then the fire surged higher, devouring the space between them. Kevin's vision blurred. The hand he reached for dissolved into smoke. The silhouette vanished into the blaze, and then only ash, only silence. He woke with a strangled cry. The sheets tangled around his body, his skin drenched with sweat. His lungs burned as if he had been breathing smoke. The room was dark, the lamp long extinguished, but his pulse hammered as though he'd run through a battlefield. Shaking, he staggered from the bed and stumbled out onto the porch. The night air clung damp against his skin, the moon silvering the mango leaves above him. He gripped the railing so tightly his knuckles whitened. "Don't let the fire take you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Don't let anything take you." He pressed the dog tag into his palm, holding it until the edges cut. He tilted his face up to the stars, searching for some answer, some sign, but the sky remained indifferent. Scattering its cold lights across the black dot, Kevin sank onto the steps, burying his face in his hands. For the first time, he realized he wasn't just fighting silence. He was fighting the fear that even his dreams had turned against him. And yet beneath the fear, one thought pulsed like a stubborn ember. If he's lost in the fire, then I will be the water that waits. If he's swallowed by darkness, then I will be the light he finds again. He whispered it over and over until the words dulled the edges of panic, until exhaustion dragged him back inside. He curled around the dog tag like it was a lifeline, and finally fitfully slept again. The visit of pity. The morning after the nightmare, Kevin moved slowly through the house. Every motion waited as though the fire from his dream still clung to him. His chest was sore, his throat raw from screams he hadn't truly made. He poured tea into a cup with hands that trembled just enough for the liquid to spill onto the table. He told himself he would not answer the door if anyone knocked. He needed silence, even if it terrified him. But silence rarely lasted. By mid-morning, it came, a rap at the door, soft, too cautious to be a soldier's knock. Kevin froze, the dog tag slipping from his fingers. For a moment he hoped it was Ditto, tired but alive, finally home. That fantasy lasted only as long as it took him to open the door. Two neighbors stood there instead, women he had known since boyhood, each holding a small bundle rice, a jar of honey, folded cloth. Their faces were arranged into careful sympathy, but it was the kind of sympathy that bit sharper than cruelty. "We thought you could use this," one said, setting the offerings down on the step. Her voice was low, like speaking too loudly might crack him. Kevin swallowed, his voice thin. "Thank you." The other woman hesitated, her eyes flicking to the dog tag at his chest. "Kevin, you can't keep doing this to yourself. Everyone sees it. The way you wait, the way you write, it isn't good for you." He stiffened, clutching the tag. "He's alive." Her lips pressed into a line, the silence saying more than words. Then she reached out, placing a hand on his arm with pity so heavy it felt like a chain. "We all understand loss. You don't have to carry it alone." Kevin jerked back, not harshly, but enough to make her hand fall. His breath came fast, his skin prickling with heat. "Don't call it loss. He isn't gone. Don't stand here and tell me how to grieve someone who still breathes." The women exchanged a glance, pity deepening into something like resignation. One murmured, "We only want you to be ready." Then they turned and walked away. their bundles left behind like offerings to a shrine. Kevin stood in the doorway long after they disappeared down the lane, his fists tight at his sides. The rice, the honey, the folded cloth sat at his feet, heavy with meaning. He wanted to hurl them into the yard, to scream that he needed no one's charity. Instead, he gathered them slowly, carried them inside, and set them on the table with shaking hands. The house felt smaller than ever, its walls too close, its silence louder than any gossip in the square. Kevin pressed the dog tag to his lips, whispering into the emptiness. "They think you're gone. They think I should give up, but I won't. Not ever." His words cracked, but his grip held. He clung to the tag, to the vow, to the fragile ember of belief that refused to die, even as pity threatened to suffocate it. The cracks in hope. The days blurred, indistinguishable threads woven from the same pale cloth. Morning light through the shutters, water poured for the mango tree, the scrape of the broom across the boards, tea steeped until bitter, each act tied to his vow, each one performed with the stubborn defiance that had kept him breathing. But vows can bend, and sometimes they frayed out. Kevin found himself moving slower, his body dragging as if time had thickened. He left dishes stacked by the basin longer than he used to. Dust gathered in corners he once kept spotless. Even the letters, the lifeline that had filled his nights with ink, began to slip from his hands. Some evenings he sat at the desk, pen poised over paper, but no words came. His hand hovered, trembled, then set the pen aside in silence. The silence was the cruelest part. He tried to fill it. He spoke aloud more often, narrating his day as though Dito stood just behind him. But his voice sounded too thin, too desperate, so he stopped. He tried humming under his breath, the fragments of songs they once shared, but the notes cracked halfway through. He fell into long silences that stretched until he startled himself at the sound of his own breath. At the market, he felt the stares more keenly now, sharper than before. Once, he would meet them with pride, chin lifted. Now his eyes darted away, his shoulders bent. He bought less, spoke less, hurried back to the safety of the house. The road home felt longer, the basket heavier. One evening, he spread Dito's letters across the bed, every envelope opened, every page worn soft from rereading. He laid them side by side, covering the sheets, the floor, the table. He read them again and again until the words blurred into a single line. Alive, safe, thinking of you. But those words no longer filled him. They hollowed him. Each repetition reminded him of how much was left unsaid, of how many days had stretched since the last letter. He pressed the papers against his chest, but the comfort was fading like a scent worn thin. That night, he dreamed not of fire but of emptiness fields, stretching without end. The road before him bare, no figure on the horizon, no sound of boots on the path, just silence, endless silence. He woke, gasping, clutching the dog tag as though it might anchor him to something real. Dot sitting on the porch at dawn. Kevin whispered the vow again. "I'll wait." The words left his lips like smoke, thin and fragile. He wasn't sure if he believed them anymore, but he said them anyway, because not saying them felt like surrender. The cracks were there, now visible, undeniable. His vow had not broken, but it wavered, trembling on the edge of collapse, waiting for either a word from Dieto or the weight of silence to finish its work. The confession in the dark. The storm began just after dusk, a low growl of thunder rolling across the hills, followed by sheets of rain that rattled against the roof. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and smoke from the neighbors' kitchens. Kevin lit the lamp, its glow small and fragile against the dark pressing at the windows, and sat at the desk with a blank page before him. For a long time, he stared at it. His pen hovered, dipped once into the ink, then rested useless in his fingers. His chest ached with words he hadn't dared to write, words he'd swallowed down in his other letters, the ones meant to be carried by traders, the ones that had to be careful, restrained, acceptable. But tonight, with the storm hiding his voice and the house holding its breath around him, he couldn't restrain them anymore. The pen scratched, uneven at first, then urgent. "Ditto. I don't know how to keep this vow without you here. Every morning I wake and half expect to see you stretched beside me, your arm heavy across my waist, your breath warm at my neck. I still reach for you in the dark. My body remembers you even when my mind begs it to stop. It's cruel, this half-life of memory." The ink smeared where his hand trembled. He pressed harder, the words spilling too fast to shape neatly. I hate the silence they leave me with. I hate the pity in their eyes, the whispers in the market. They tell me to prepare, to move on, as though love was something you could fold away like a blanket. I cannot, I will not. Even if this waiting breaks me, I would rather be broken for you than whole without you. His breath came shallow now, each word cutting him as it left. Do you still think of me when the nights are long? Do you dream of me as I dream of you? Sometimes I wonder if you still carry me in your chest the way I carry you in mine, or if the world you're in has already swallowed me whole. I tell myself it hasn't. I tell myself you would never let it. The pen faltered. A blot spread across the page like a wound. Kevin's vision blurred, tears falling too quickly to brush away. He dropped the pen and pressed both hands over the words, smearing the ink, desperate to hold them down before they fled. He bent low, pressing his forehead against the page, whispering the last part because he couldn't bear to write it. Come back to me, please. I don't know how long I can fight the dark without you. When he finally lifted his head, the paper was wrinkled and stained, the words blurred but still legible, raw and unguarded. He folded it once, clumsily, and slid it into the tin box beneath the bed, not with the other letters meant for couriers, but in a bundle of its own. This one would never leave the house. It was too naked, too much like opening his chest and laying his heart on the table. The rain softened to a drizzle, thunder moving farther away. Kevin blew out the lamp and lay in bed, the confession still burning in his chest. For the first time in weeks, he slept without dreaming, not because the fear had left him, but because he had emptied himself onto the page. A shadow returns. The days after Kevin's unwritten confession felt strangely hollow, as though pouring himself onto that page had left him emptied. He moved through his tasks, watering the mango tree, sweeping the floorboards, boiling rice like a ghost in his own life. The vow still lived on his lips, but it had thinned to something brittle. It was during the blue hour, when shadows lengthened and the sky began to bruise, that he saw it. A figure on the road. At first, Kevin didn't breathe. He stood frozen on the porch, his basket of laundry forgotten at his feet. The man coming up the hill was tall, broad-shouldered, his stride weary but familiar enough to set Kevin's heart hammering against his ribs. For a moment, just one treacherous moment, the world narrowed to that silhouette. His throat closed around a name he dared not speak. Dito. He didn't run this time. The last time had broken him too deeply. Instead, he gripped the railing, nails biting into the wood, watching, waiting, trembling with hope he both feared and craved. The man drew closer. Dust streaked his uniform, his face weathered with exhaustion, but it wasn't Dieter. Kevin's chest clenched, hope collapsing inward. He turned half away, ready to retreat into the safety of the house, when the soldiers slowed. Their eyes met briefly, and in that pause hung something unexpected. Not pity, not curiosity, but recognition. You wait for someone, the soldier said quietly, his voice roughened by travel. Kevin's lips parted, but no sound came. The man shifted his pack on his shoulder, nodding once. He saved me once, ditto. His voice dropped lower, as though giving away a secret too fragile for the wind. He's alive. Kevin's breath caught. The words struck like lightning, splitting him open. He stepped forward instinctively, desperate for more, but the soldier only offered him that one mercy. Without another word, he tipped his chin and moved on, his boots fading into the dusk. Kevin stood rooted to the ground, every muscle trembling. Relief and agony collided in his chest, alive, but still away. Alive, but unreachable. Slowly, he sank onto the porch steps, his body shaking with sobs that were not grief, not joy, but something jagged in between. He pressed the dog tag against his lips, whispering into the encroaching night, "You're alive. You're alive." The road stretched empty before him once more, but this time Kevin clung to the ember the soldier had left behind. It wasn't a letter, it wasn't proof, but it was enough to make the vow flare inside him again, sharp and burning. Between ash and dawn. That night, Kevin did not sleep. The soldier's words, "He's alive," beat against his ribs like a second heartbeat, wild and relentless. He paced the small house, touching familiar things as though they'd changed meaning. The folded letters beneath the bed, the scarf on the porch bench, the kettle on the stove. Each one felt charged, trembling with a truth too fragile to hold and too sharp to let go. By midnight, the storm inside him had settled into something harder. Not calm, never calm, but forged. He lit the lamp and sat at the desk, pulling out a fresh page. His hand hovered before the pen touched ink. This letter wasn't meant for couriers. It wasn't meant for anyone but the silence itself. Dito, they say, you are alive. I don't know where you are. I don't know if you can hear me, but I will not let them bury you with their pity and their whispers. If you are lost, then I am the road. If you are in darkness, then I am the light. You'll follow back. I will not stop. I will not bend. I am yours, and I will be here. The words came steady, not frantic this time. Each one deliberate, a carving instead of a cry. He folded the page and tucked it into the bundle of unsent letters, laying his hand on top as though sealing a packed dot. When the lamp began to flicker, Kevin stepped outside. The night was cold and quiet, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. The village lay dark below, but above, the stars burned fiercely. Indifferent yet constant, he stood beneath the mango tree, the dog tag cool against his chest. His breath clouded in the air as he whispered to the sky, "You're alive. You'll find me. I'll be here." The words did not tremble this time. They rang inside him like iron struck against stone scarred. Yes, but unbreakable. He stayed there until the first edge of dawn painted the horizon, pale gold pushing back the night. His body ached with exhaustion, but his heart carried something else. Not the brittle hope of before, but a flame that burned lower and steadier, one that would not be snuffed out. Between ash and dawn, Kevin reforged his vow. The silence was still heavy, the absence still unbearable, but now he carried it differently, like armor, like fire, like the only truth that mattered. And when the sun finally lifted above the hills, he whispered one last time, certain now, "Come back to me. I will not move. I will not let go." Love can survive silence, but can it survive war? Kevin believes it can. His vow remains unbroken, his heart still searching for the man who holds it. The next letter, the next dawn, the next step could change everything. Stay with us as the story of Kevin and Dito continues.